All right, I'm with Dr. David Robinson, and he is interviewing me. Um, and anyway, I hope this is showing. I hope this shows up. Let me see. Hang on. Okay. Well, yeah. I'm pinning me. Okay. There we go. Okay. So there we go. Yeah. So I'm with Dr. David Robinson, and you're interviewing me about the Gaylord era of Radio Titans. And I guess, I don't know if I have questions about from before, but you were around so long that basically you're one of the people who's interviewing me so I can get my story across. And I guess that's it. You've got the list of questions there.
I do. I guess first question is, when did you come to LA, and did you immediately move into the Gaylord? How do you decide to move there?
Okay, so I moved to LA in October 2002, and basically came there because I'd burned about every bridge I could possibly burn in Chicago, both comedy-wise and journalistically. Whole other story, but I was known as being kind of a bull in a china shop over there, and I had managed to work at every major newspaper, but also managed to be asked not to work for every major newspaper as well by the time I was done. And then I also was kind of controversial on the comedy scene at times because two reasons. I was trying to, I was fine with trying to make it in the regular club zanies there, but a lot of the other people in the comedy scene coming up, they totally were all about just being independent, which I appreciated more in LA. I followed more of an independent, make my own show path, but in Chicago, I was seen as a sellout by a lot of people because I really pursued working at Zanies, and also I had started a competing comedy festival one year that did some real damage to the bigger fest in town. And so I think I'm the only photo in the history of Zanies walls that you can see a big torn out hole behind. Like somebody ripped my photo off the wall and absconded with it. That's how popular I was among other comedians. And I think it's still a gaping hole to this day. So anyway, so I moved to LA because I had no other options. And I was like, okay, I come here. I had some family in the area. I figured I'd be fine. Dumb choice because of the fact that I was basically narcoleptic, and you have to drive in LA. Within 9 months of living in LA, I managed to crash my car while falling asleep at the wheel. And that set off a full 16 years of misadventures, having to ride buses and trains around Los Angeles in the car capital of the world. And if I had moved to New York, my other option, I would have been fine. Never would have had to drive, would have been on buses and trains, and but leave it to me to make the wrong choice in every possible respect. And I wound up living at the Gaylord in 2009. It basically, I had always read about the Gaylord in multiple articles in the LA Times. It had been mentioned as a place that was a hub for artists in Los Angeles. And there's a saying I was told when I moved into the Gaylord: you either leave in a hearse or a limo. And the reason why is that almost nobody ever moves away, but if they do, it's because they became a star in some respect and took off, for the high life. So basically I moved to the Gaylord because it just was this place that fascinated me with its history, and because it was a really ornate lobby, and it just sounded like a cool place to be, and I wound up spending a decade there.
Well, speaking of the lobby, I know you used to do the Pajama Party show in the lobby. I had the pleasure of being on a couple of them. How did you start that?
So the Pajama Party, basically, it started as a fluke. At first, there was a woman in the building that claimed that she could do comedy, and she heard that I was a comedian. I was not in any way trying to perform in the lobby or make a show of myself. I was actually a pretty private person a lot of the time around the Gaylord. Like I look at my place as a place to unwind and not be stuck in public or whatever. But the manager of the building said that this woman had heard that I did stand-up comedy, and that she wanted to perform just to show off to the neighbors that she does stand-up. And so he asked if I would host it so that there was somebody there to help ease her, way into doing this performance. And I decided, well, there's a couple of things that could happen. Either she's really great and awesome, the more power to her. But
Yeah,
I
I
thought
think you got better odds on a lottery ticket usually, but go on.
yeah, so I thought, okay, I'm going to introduce her, but I decided to get more acts involved, and I can't remember exactly who I had. I think it was Merrill Davis and Russ Gutin, and maybe Adam Grotman was involved, since he was involved in so many other shows there. But basically, I put together about another 3 comics so that we could stick this lady in the middle, so that if she sucked, it wasn't like devastating for her. The evening could still be salvaged, and people could, give her the, oh yeah, that was really funny, nice courtesy, answer. And so anyways, it turned out she was okay. But we had such a good time putting on the show that the manager said, hey, would you keep doing this? Because I think we had like 20-25 people right off the bat. Okay, so then what happened was I decided to call Pajama Party from the very get-go, because I literally lived in the apartment directly above the lobby of the Gaylord. Like, you look up at the ceiling, I'm above it. And so I thought it was funny that this was the world's easiest commute to a show in a city where everybody gets stuck in traffic. So I thought I would really play up on that and wear pajamas when I would host the show. And I started with the second or third try, I started special ordering like silk pajamas and trying to go kind of the full heft, even though I was more heft than hef. But anyway, so I got together with one of my best friends, Adam Grotman, another comic, and I said, hey, would you host this show with me? We came up with this idea it was Adam's idea, that not just stand-up should occur, we should have the comics sit down for an interview after their set. So basically people would perform 10 minutes and then 8 to 10 minutes, and then we would sit them down for about 5 minutes and ask them questions that were usually written on the fly based on what they talked about in their set. And so it was a lot of fun having that kind of talk show aspect. But what also made it really stand out and drew a crowd at the Gaylord was the fact that we offered free pie for no apparent reason at the shows. And so I basically just got the idea, like, let's offer pie, put it on the flyer. Well, tons of people would show up for free pie. They didn't really care about the comedy until they sat down and, watched out of politeness for a little while. And we had such good comics that people really caught onto it and just kept coming for the full experience, the pie and the comedy after that. And yeah.
I think one of the I mean, not one of my favorite things, but one of the things that really stuck out to me is, doing comedy in LA, you do so many shows in bars where people walk in and you see that look on their face like, oh shit, there's comedy tonight. And the lobby of the Gaylord is also the midway point between the bar, the HMS Bounty, and the bathrooms,
Yeah.
which are in the basement of the Gaylord. So rather than people walking into a bar and having that look on their face of, oh shit, a comedy show. It was people walking out of a bar, and plus, like, that took them right by the stage. So it was, no way for them to avoid being seen.
Yeah. So so here's the thing that was that thanks for bringing that up. I almost forgot, because what I think made the show more special than anything was the fact that the manager claimed that we couldn't use any foul language because there's a child in the building. There was like one guy who was 12 years old. Like, the kid probably had a dirtier mouth at that age than anybody who would have performed if they were uncensored. So this idiot, like, a great manager normally, but it was such an idiotic policy. So I'm not saying he's an idiot. The policy was, he said no swearing. So I said fine. But then, because comics have to watch their behavior so much, I said then everybody is fair game that comes through the lobby to get poked fun at. If you come out of the bar, you will be made fun of. If you walk through as a resident, you will be made fun of. If you will, any other reason, or some people were coming in from the street into the lobby visiting, people would come off the elevators and be surprised that something was going on. People would come swinging out of the bar, drunk off their ass, looking for a bathroom, and you were fair game. It was like a shooting gallery for comedy.
It's free pie and free roast.
Yeah.
One of the other things about the Gaylord, there was a swimming pool out back, and you did some pool parties down there
Yeah.
with kind of the whole Radio Titans family.
Yeah, so basically, this made no sense business-wise, as almost everything about Radio Titans made no sense business-wise, but artistically, it was a fun thing to try. My hero is David Letterman, as I'm wearing the late night shirt. And anyways, I thought, if I'm going to throw a pool party, I'm going to throw a pool party in the wackiest, biggest, most ridiculous way possible. And so we thought this would be a great way to spread the word about Radio Titans on the city's social scene. And the thing is, we had 150 people show up. I mean, that was the official count that came through over the course of about 8 hours. And that's an insanely successful pool party. But in reality, when you're talking about, hey, will this help translate into a mass audience that'll get us thousands of listeners? No. But the thing was, what we did, we put on 7 bands and 10 comedians over the course of 8 hours. There was like an hour-long break between the bands and the comics. And the noise level from the bands was so big that the LAPD showed up not once, not twice, but 3 times to try and see what the hell was going on. All 3 times we sent them laughing away with a soda, because till 10 o'clock in LA, you can do whatever you want. And they said that the noise complaints were coming in from as far as 2 miles away. Like a hotel 2 miles away was complaining that their tenants were mad about the noise. And so, I mean, then on top of it all, Jake Bowman, my partner in Radio Titans, he said, look, I know a guy who raises pigs. We need a pig on a spit. So we ordered at $400, again, brilliant business move. We ordered a pig on a spit. And then we also bought about $200 worth of alcohol, like just filled 2 trash cans with unlimited beer, and then turned everybody loose at the pool with all this going on. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah, I remember we got there after the pig was gone. It's a fun time though. So
And you performed at the comedy thing, I believe, because I know I interviewed you. I have footage of that, because I also interviewed the comics in the lobby while wearing pajamas, like I was wearing pajamas, but you were one of the 10 comics. And I think it was a better experience for the bands than it was the comics, because we had the comics set up on one end of the pool and the audience on the other, and that's just too big a distance to really work.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a very wide span, but it was, it was a good time. Um, I don't remember what exactly it was because I had also, been working on the Cause Effect back when everything was downtown. So what was it that made you decide to move from the offices downtown to your apartment at the Gaylord?
Okay, so the offices downtown, they were a great deal. I mean, we were only paying about 800 or 900 a month for, great window office in a downtown skyscraper. But what killed us finally was we were paying for a service called Libsyn to help distribute our podcasts. And the thing about Libsyn was they did a great job, but the more success you had, the more you paid. And so as we started getting some real decent listenership, I think we were approaching like, I don't know, this isn't like, groundbreaking listenership, but we were up to about 50,000 a month, something like that. And they started charging us almost as much as the rent for the bandwidth on their service. And they finally hit me with a bill for like $790 and said I had 3 days to pay. And I had no way to do it. We were always just skating by financially because this was always more an artistic move than it was a business move, even though I fooled myself into thinking I want to make this a good business. I always was cutting deals with people to have shows at unsustainably low rates, or would trade shows for, hey, would you handle the sound on some programs? I'll give you a show, and so basically couldn't afford it anymore. And I just was like, that's it, I'm packing up. And we just pulled the plug and didn't deal with Libsyn and got out of downtown. I decided on the Gaylord, just bringing it home because I thought, well, this is a fun building. I've been staging events here anyway for a while. I did over 50 Pajama Party comedy shows. And then I had also staged not just the one pool party, but a second one the next year that was all music. And I thought, people already are used to having some cool things happen here. It's a fun lobby to get people to walk through. I should just set up a studio in my studio apartment. And that was kind of ridiculous because I don't know how I wasn't annoyed faster by it, but I had that in my apartment dominating the layout of my place for 3 years before I finally pulled the plug in 2018. And so it was just odd that every Saturday, especially, was when people would mostly come over. I would have anywhere from 3 to 5 shows come through in a day. And because it takes time to, set up, record, get in between, and then you're working your magic on the audio, sometimes, you were there all the way till like 9 o'clock at night sometimes, which is great and diligent, and thank you. But as far as like trying to live and relax or whatever, it's a crazy way to live. And I finally decided to end it was a combination of just getting frustrated with not having any downtime in my place hardly, but also let me pause a second. Pause. Hang on, I'm gonna hit pause. Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, so I decided to end it after 3 years because I just was like, oh my God, I need to have a life again at some point. And I'll never forget like the first couple of Saturdays that I was without having shows come over. I was like, oh, so this is what people do on weekends. I was going to the beach and going to the movies and whatever. But anyways, I mean, I wish that I had come up with a more, dignified, positive way of ending things. But it was kind of abrupt for some shows. I just said, that's it. And then I think I gave Let's Be Treasonable like a month to figure out what you're going to do. And then you've started doing it from your place ever since, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, anyways,
basically set up a studio at my place and kept going with Treasonable and a couple other shows
okay.
from Titans. So yeah.
Yeah, Everyday Heroes, I know. And what any other?
Well, Ebner actually
Oh, okay.
did, I think,
Yeah.
one episode from here before he went on hiatus. But
Yeah.
let's talk
Okay.
about him because that
Yeah.
was, that was a lot of fun. I remember he was a guest on Oh Man, That's Awful,
Yeah.
and we were largely talking about Scientology.
Yeah.
And then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but out of that, you offered him his own show, which I had the privilege of working on.
Yeah. So Mark Ebner, Mark Ebner was a longtime journalist who was like the king of digging up dirt on Hollywood. And I would read him when I was in college in Spy Magazine, which is like the greatest magazine ever, long gone, sadly. And so, anyways, all these years later, I was shocked to find that he lived in Pasadena, where I worked at the Pasadena Weekly. And I told my boss, I said, "Oh my God, this guy's one of the greatest writers ever. I need to do a story on him." And so my boss was like, "Yeah, sure," thankfully. And so I set it up as I so often did. I told the Ebner, "Hey, would you come do a podcast? I'll interview you there, and then I'll use that as the basis for the article." And so Ebner came over, and he loved like the Gaylord, the whole vibe, because it's kind of got this haunted vibe and a historic vibe and all that. And so he thought it fit his kind of film noirish sensibilities really well. And he was a guest on Oh Man, That's Awful. We talked about Scientology. I had investigated them many years before and found some crazy things myself. And it was just a wild conversation. And I'm sitting there with one of my heroes, and he just says, "Hey, I haven't heard about podcast. I haven't really done a podcast before. How do you get a podcast?" And Ebner, is a very cool writer, but apparently wasn't up on, the whole modern tech wave of things. And so I just said, "Oh my God, if you would do a show out of my apartment, I would be like totally honored." And so he decided to start a show out of my apartment, and he called it The Gray Zone with Mark Ebner. You can find it various places online. I highly recommend it, folks. And each week, what he would do is he wrote an elaborate hour-long script in which he would unveil like one or two of Hollywood's biggest scandals and tell the story behind the story of how he broke the story, or some couple times he even broke news. One time that Ebner broke news that really made actually headlines all over America and possibly the world. He actually managed to get the scoop that a major Hollywood talent agent named Skip Chasey from William Morris's TV division had a sex dungeon in his house, and that a man who was one of his frequent guests had died while being mummified in plastic by this agent. And Ebner found the story and the fact that this guy died under these highly bizarre circumstances. And it was such a weird thing because it made all the Hollywood news outlets covered it nationwide. Anything,
Ironically, the one that didn't, considering the topic of this story, the one Hollywood gossip site that did not, it covered it but did not give attribution, was The Wrap.
well,
But
Deadline, they
they
went for
picked
it.
up the story, but they didn't, like everyone else credited Ebner with breaking the story, because I think it was, I'm blanking on the name, but one of the like the gossip newsletters. They don't even have a blog or a website. It's still just a mail list. they broke it, and then Hollywood Reporter and Variety picked it up, and then it was picked up by entertainment press around the country and the world. But yeah, with the exception of the Wrap, everyone credited Ebner with breaking the story.
Yeah, well, it was amazing that here he gets the story of how this major executive agent is a complete, I'll just call it complete pervert, and the guy died under
Well,
his watch.
that wasn't the story. It was the
No, but the
death.
guy
I
died
mean,
under
there's
his
plenty of
watch.
perverts in LA.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
but what I'm saying is this guy can have a sex dungeon in his house, can wrap guys up as a mummy in plastic and give them GBH and have them die under their watch, and he's still never lost his job. I called since then one time just to see, can you actually reach Skip Chasey at William Morris? Amazingly, you can. So anyway, but the other one that Ebner broke was he either broke or added to the story of Stan Lee, the founder of Marvel Comics, and he had some pretty shocking. I think he had Stan Lee's final interview, actually, and we aired it on the show, in which Stan was basically, kind of helpless towards the end of his life and was being taken advantage of financially by multiple parties. And we also broke that story. So that was pretty wild. And I guess, if there's, out of all the shows that Radio Titans had, I would say that's the one that I was most excited to have and proudest of, because this guy was like complete icon to me journalistically, and that was my main career over the years.
nice. I want to go back to just talking about the Gaylord, because in addition to Radio Titans, you were also working on a sitcom.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I came up with a idea. Like a lot of people were telling me, man, your life should be a sitcom because you're narcoleptic and you have access to celebrities and you'll never know when to shut your damn mouth. And so, and I'm, politically incorrect for Hollywood, being Republican. So there were so many different ways that I had screwed things up over the years, and also always skating by as a bad businessman. And so I decided to take them up on the idea, and I created what I intended to be like a Curb Your Enthusiasm style show where I played myself in an exaggerated situations. Okay, so then what I did was we actually shot this thing 3 different times before I finally felt like it was like something that I thought, oh, this has a chance to go somewhere. And the third time I did get an agent out of it. It never went any further. But I do feel some vindication that, I got signed as a writer and as an actor across the board as a result for that run. But the sitcom, it basically told the story of my life as a entertainment reporter, as a comedian, and as a podcaster who always falls asleep or says the wrong thing at the wrong time. And the show, all 3 times we had as a special guest, who was a big part of the plot, was actor Stephen Tobolowsky. Tobolowsky is most famous for playing Ned Ryerson in Groundhog Day, the nerdy guy who runs around chasing Bill Murray saying, "I'm Ned Ryerson, bing." Well, Stephen is one of Hollywood's 10 busiest actors, according to Variety. He has well over 200 credits in his career. And yet I was always fascinated by Groundhog Day above all else. So we made the plot in the final version that people can most easily see, be that I'm trying to trick Stephen into saying, "I'm Ned Ryerson, bing," in order to win $500 in change on a bet at my newspaper office. But there were a couple other versions that also were shot. And the first one which I still have a copy of. I never got the second version. I'll get to that in a moment. But the first version of it, we had it shot by one of my editors at the newspaper, liked to make short films himself. And he said, "Oh, Kaz, we can shoot this on an iPhone." And I thought, that's ridiculous, but I had no money whatsoever to spend. And so I let him direct the thing and shoot it on an iPhone. And I'll be damned if he actually, looking back on it now, as I've been going over this project, I watched it again, and I would say that about half of it looks really great and is actually pretty funny and works. And I have it posted online on the Facebook page for Podcrash, this movie that we're doing, the documentary. But the problem was he didn't shoot any coverage, which in a lot of the scenes, meaning if Stephen Tobolowsky was talking, he kept the camera just on Tobolowsky, didn't show any reactions from the rest of us, and never turned the camera to show us talking back to Tobolowsky. It just stayed on him. And that kind of thing happened in about half the show. And I just was like, we can't use this. It doesn't work. And so we tried a second time. And this time I had a very successful British commercial director who made ads in indie films. And she offered to help out because she had a couple weeks free. And she brought in real cameras. I got a better sound guy. And we changed the plot somewhat. Made a go of it again. But the problem was that the second time around, her filming techniques, she wanted to have all sorts of really like eye-popping, like visual tricks. Like she did one shot like between somebody's legs on the ground, pointing up at a group of other actors sitting on a couch, and you would get the point of view from no apparent reason whatsoever from between the legs of another person who was right in front of the camera. Or she would shoot from a higher level and film a conversation looking down, like you're doing like a sky view of the city. It was all sorts of weird tricks, and it just didn't lend itself well to comedy. And then also Jake Belcher, who I let play the villain in the show, because he had been the guy that caused things to fall apart with Radio Titans in Hollywood. I wrote him a part where he's a drug dealer and causes a prank phone call to happen that gets me in a lot of trouble. But the thing was, when we did the viewing party, the half of the people that knew that Jake had caused financial hardship for me in the past were asking me, "Why the hell do you have Jake in the show? Are you out of your mind? Why reward him?" And then the half of people who didn't know who he was, they all just thought, "God, that guy's annoying." And one person said they would rather watch 30 minutes of somebody running nails down a chalkboard than watch any scene that involved Jake. And Jake wasn't at that viewing party to defend himself. And so I panicked, and I just thought, well, this is a disaster. Not just because of him, but because of all the weird camera angles too. And so that version, I didn't want to get out either, but the director understandably got mad at me. And to this day, I've never gotten a hold of the footage even. So, and then the third time was the charm. We shot it with Christina Myers Hepburn, who's probably my top female collaborator over the years with Radio Titans. And she helped me write a much better script than I had before. And she co-directed with a friend of hers named Gina Levy. And we lucked into a much better cast that time. I still had Christina and Ed, who are my real life co-hosts on podcasts. I still had Scott Vinci playing the sound guy for the third time. And we had Tobolowsky again. But to play my newspaper coworkers, we wound up with 3 comics who'd been on The Tonight Show: Kira Sultanovich, Ron Pearson, Dwayne Perkins. And the whole show, it looked better than ever before, because we also had a camera crew from a CBS sitcom called Superior Donuts. This one cameraman met me and agreed to donate his time for 3 days. And the next thing we know, we had a sitcom that was shot by a real camera crew, directed by a veteran director, Gina Levy, and with a really amazing cast. And so I'm quite proud of that one. And I'll be making sure it's highly visible on this website.
When you mentioned Christina and Ed, and you guys all work together on Grown Ass Men, right?
Yeah, Grown Ass Men was a talk show that I intended to be a successor to Grand Theft Audio, the show that got me into podcasting. And Grown Ass Men initially was me and a black guy named Clive Aiden and a Latino guy named Sal Rodriguez. And the three of us, my intention was, if you get all of the three major races together, then you can really have like a high likelihood of having a true diversity of opinions and really be like what the View ought to be, instead of a bunch of white women together. And so, back then it was all white women when it started. But anyway, so the thing was that I'm trying to think. Okay, anyway, so over time, as Sal and Clive moved on, I wound up having a woman named Maria Shahada became co-host. And she, for whatever reason, thought that calling it Grown Ass Men, even with her as a woman involved, was still a funny idea. So we kept the name, and eventually Christina came on board, and Ed Galvez was already there. So we did that downtown for about a year, and then the three of us. And then when I moved home to the Gaylord, we did another, like, I don't know, year and a half of shows. Maybe even 2 years. I can't remember. I think it was a year and a half of shows at the Gaylord, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, the vibe was different doing it out of an apartment compared to, ta-da, you're in the skyline view of Los Angeles. But I still think people were impressed with the lobby and had a good time coming in there. And it was just a lot of fun, and very much more of a goofy friends having a talk kind of vibe than it was before.
Well, you talk about the change in setting, and I remember Priscilla Barnes used to, joke about the apartment studio, and joke about how Hollywood was known for the casting couch.
Oh,
You
yeah.
actually had a bed in the studio.
Yeah, so here I'm in a studio apartment, which means there is no separate bedroom. And while I took pride in never having sexually harassed anybody, the optics, shall we say, no doubt caused consternation for many women on first glance, because they would come into the room and there's a bed like 5 or 10 feet away from the recording table. And Priscilla thought that was pretty funny, piece of furniture to have so close to a show. And a lot of other women mentioned it over time, although nothing ever happened, of course. And yeah,
not a lot of work to be done in audio porn. Usually
yeah.
it's more of a stronger visual medium. So.
That's a good point. Yeah. Actually, hey, just because I'm going to be cutting this with it showing me, can I steal that line real quick?
Sure.
So nothing really, look, nothing ever really happened there, folks. So because, there's not a lot of market for audio porn.
Very true. Stronger visual medium. On the topic of Priscilla, because I think I actually worked on one episode of Grown Ass Men, but worked more on Oh Man, That's Awful, and of course, I did Priscilla's show, but you had some interesting guests in studio over the years at the Gaylord, ranging from Ed Asner, the cast of Three's Company, to Shane Black. That was a really fun interview. What are some of your favorite memories of some of the guests you had?
Okay, well, I'd have to say that the craziest experience ever was Priscilla Barnes, who was an actress on Three's Company, bringing in several of the key co-stars from the show. And so, we had Joyce DeWitt show up, we had Jenna Lee Harrison show up, and then we had Richard Klein show up, who played Larry, John Ritter's best friend. And the thing was, they showed up an hour earlier than they were supposed to, and there was an episode of Let's Be Treasonable that was getting ready to tape in that hour before them. And so imagine, I had 3 or 4 of my very good friends had just settled in to record their show, and suddenly coming and knocking on our door, just like in the sitcom, are these actors from Three's Company. And it wound up turning into a real life episode of Three's Company for me, because I had to keep running in and out of the door on both sides, whispering, begging each side, please stick around to the stars, please leave, to my friends that were on the inside. And finally, the political show, you guys kindly but frustratingly left, because we were in danger of losing the Three's Company reunion. But okay, so then another favorite, I'd say Shane Black. That was another favorite for me always over the years. He was a guest. He was the creator of Lethal Weapon, and he also had written and directed Iron Man 3 and done several other great movies: Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Long Kiss Goodnight, Last Boy Scout. Just amazing. The other guys. And he's Hollywood's highest selling screenwriter of all time, and beat his own record 3 times. And so I met him at a screenwriting conference in 2009 and asked him to be a guest on Grand Theft Audio. And he was such a great guest in 2010 that, and such a kind guy and down to earth, that he agreed to keep being a guest pretty much whenever I asked him over the years. And just always had an amazing way with words, of course, and telling, all sorts of Hollywood stories, including his own rise and fall and return to glory. And let's see, another, I'm trying to pause on occasion so I can make cleaner breaks up between the stories. Who was, Ed Asner. Ed Asner was a trip. He shows up for Priscilla Barnes' show, and I'd had Ed Asner as a guest on the phone for a couple of podcasts before, but to have him actually show up at my apartment, I mean, the guy who's won more Emmys than any actor in Hollywood history, 7 Emmys, and he shows up, and it was funny because he basically got away with murder because he was her friend. Ed is apparently like if not a dirty old man, a pretty naughty old man. And he sat down and he said he wouldn't do Priscilla's show until she sat on his lap. And so I think they did the entire episode with her sitting on his lap.
No, she wound up going to her own seat when we started recording.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I saw some good photos of her sitting on his lap.
Microphones. No, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then as far as Oh Man, That's Awful, your favorite guest, also one of mine, is James Eckhouse. We have Mr. Walsh from Beverly Hills 90210 on, and he was directing a play at the Pasadena Playhouse, so that's how I managed to get him for an interview. And I had no idea that this guy had hilarious stories, including the time that he was naked on stage in a play and followed a disgusted older couple out of the theater, harassing them while reciting his lines on the way out. It's one of the funniest episodes that you'll ever hear of any podcast ever. It's up on Spreaker. Look for James Eckhouse on Oh Man, That's Awful. And he turned out to be a fabulous guest with us. And, looking forward to having him again on my new show.
And I remember also Danny Seraphine, the drummer from Chicago.
Yeah, Danny was an interesting guy because Chicago, they started out as an awesome rocking band with a killer horn section, and then over the years, as Peter Cetera took on more singing, they really became a sappy love song band. And Danny was the founder of Chicago. He put them together, but he had sadly been voted out in 1990 when he complained that they were losing touch with what made them great and selling out too much with the ballads. And so he got ousted out, started his own band that's just amazing with the former piano player of Chicago along with him, and calls it the CTA. And he came on as a guest, and I thought, in Chicago, there's going to be all mellow stories of, just, lovey-dovey. I didn't think there'd be any sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And was I proven wrong. I mean, this guy, he had stories that made it sound like Def Leppard were on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So
good times. Anything else you wanted to share before we wrap things up?
no, I think I'm good, Dave, and I gotta get going anyway. So thanks.
Right on. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for watching, folks, and can't wait to cut this up for the movie. Thanks.